Traveling to the west, I inherited an invincible mysterious Taoist temple, but I couldn't bear to see the Buddhists choosing to close their doors and die in the year of natural disasters, so I took the initiative to spend all the Taoist temple's money and food to help the people. But when I returned from traveling for 3 years, I not only found that the Taoist temple had been bulldozed and built into a temple. There were actually a group of bald deer who came to me asking for incense and money. I was so angry that I demolished the Pindao Taoist temple. There was no need for the Buddhist gate. At this time, when Zan Burm was expounding Buddhist scriptures on the high platform, I couldn't help but frown. It was inconsistent with Buddhism and Taoism. It has always been the case since ancient times. Why did the benefactor come here this time? Guan, who was mixed in the crowd in the audience, looked at the Zan burial with ease and nodded secretly. He became more and more satisfied with this song. Thinking of this, Guan was not in a hurry to show up, but he wanted to let's see how Zan Zhang will react to the sudden appearance of this Taoist. Anyway, no matter what happens, he is still here. It's not like this little Taoist can compete with himself as a quasi-sage. And I heard when I arrived at Zan Zhang, I was really laughed at because this bald donkey occupied Taoist master's Taoist temple and dared to ask him what was going on. Why didn't he hurry up and get off the Taoist priest? Everyone in Wenyan was stunned. This little Taoist actually insulted Zan Zhang at a Buddhist event. Master Zan Zhang frowned slightly on the high platform at this moment. When did this reincarnation of the donor become your Taoist temple? He felt that the Taoist in front of him might have come specially to disrupt this Buddhist conference, and some strong 5 monks had already started approaching me and seeing this scene. Some people who had been favored by the Taoist temple couldn't help but tried to persuade the Taoist priest to leave quickly. This group of monks was so aggressive that it was not easy to deal with them on the high platform in the distance. Although Zan Zhang felt something was wrong in his heart, he never spoke to stop it. After all, for him, the most important thing is to continue this Buddhist conference. Looking at this scene, I was happy. These monks planned to conquer people with force, but the problem was this: but it's my own territory. Who among the gods and Buddhas in the sky is my opponent? When I came to this world of journey to the west, I inherited a magical Taoist temple. As long as I am within the scope of the Taoist temple, I am invincible. However, even though I know that these monks cannot hurt me in the slightest, I still feel in my heart. I was so angry that if I were in another place without the blessing of the Taoist temple, I would have suffered so much that I couldn't explain it. Thinking of this, I took a step forward. The next moment, the 5 monks who rushed over fell to the ground. I thought you were an eminent monk, but now it seems he is nothing more than a sanctimonious bald donkey. Then I looked at Xuanzang on the high platform and said coldly, "Use what you have learned to save people, women, children and children. All the people in Chang'an know how this Taoist temple has become your bullshit temple." Many people have spoken in classical Chinese. It's true, we can prove that this is the Taoist temple of the little Taoist priest. The monk robbed someone else's Taoist temple. Don't tell me, do you still want to beat someone? Now the monks in the field were a little panicked. They were either advancing or retreating. When Xuanzang saw this scene, he also showed a trace of disgust. Now the people's behavior seemed that the Taoist priest had not lied, but Xuanzang did not want to miss this. There was a moment of silence at the meeting of water and land masters, and then he spoke softly and asked, "Can the donor please wait for the monk to finish speaking on the sutra before talking about this Taoist temple?" You know, in order to prepare for this Buddhist meeting, Xuanzang had to stay up late to read the sutras at night and add more. This was a great opportunity to promote Buddhism. He really didn't want to give it up. Some people who were devoted to Buddhism also said, yes, it's still important to listen to the sutras. Master Xuanzang saves all sentient beings. What's the matter? Isn't it just a Taoist temple? How could such a huge Buddhist sect be able to default on its debts? Faced with this situation that was almost the target of 1,000 people's criticism, I just said a few words. But the anger deep in my heart has been completely ignited. Even if this Buddhist Tathagata comes today, I can't even think about it. Why do you have to pay money to enter your own home? Why do you have to look at other people's faces to ask for your things back? You said you wanted to save all sentient beings. Back then, there was a drought and the plague was rampant in the Red Land. What was Buddhism doing behind closed doors now? The people are stable and the treasury is full. On the contrary, Buddhism holds a conference of land and water masters to attract fortune tellers. Even this Buddhist conference has to pay incense money to enter. This is what you call the salvation of all sentient beings. The Buddha's salvation in this life is all made possible by the hard-earned money of all sentient beings. How dare you say that you can save all sentient beings? I am worthy of the boldness of Buddha Kirong. After the brief silence of death, the accountant of Washeng Temple was the first to react and yelled at a little Taoist priest. "If you don't get out of here, I will kick you out." This Taoist priest has some courage from a distance. Li Shimin, Emperor Taizong of the Tang dynasty, looked at the dojo that suddenly became solemn and chuckled. A look of interest flashed across his face. Just as he was about to see how he would end it, Xuanzang reacted and clasped his hands together. It's just to build temples and spread teachings and spread Buddhism. As for most comrades in this life, they are just a layer of gold. What the donor said is probably a bit wrong. Comrade, Although I don't have much contact with the abbot of Washeng Temple, as a former neighbor, how can I not know the temperament of this old bald donkey? As early as when Washeng Temple was still a small temple, he had seen the unlucky Gaza many times with many gems inlaid on it. Now that Washeng Temple is glowing red, at this opportunity, his temperament has changed and he has become silent. I didn't say anything for a moment but walked straight in front of the Buddha. Suddenly an axe appeared in my hand and struck the Buddha mercilessly. The roar of the vertical knife echoed. No one expected that this Taoist priest was so bold. At this point, many eminent monks were about to chop down the Buddha statue. The next moment, the axe fell steadily on the Buddha statue, revealing a bottomless crack. Even Guan in the crowd was stunned, with a hint of mystery on his face. He had an inexplicable look, but he suddenly noticed a golden glow emerging from the cracks in the Buddha statue. He deduced a little and his face suddenly sank. The Buddha statue was actually made of true scriptures. On the other hand, Zan Zhang was a little confused when he saw this scene. He has been a monk in Jinshan Temple since he was a child. The Buddha statues in Jinshan Temple and almost all temples are of the same type, a few are even made of clay. But at this moment, Xuanzang couldn't help but feel a little silent. He thought about his generous words just now and said that the Taoist was wrong, but he never thought about it. He had mistakenly thought that Buddhism was not a completely pure place. Suddenly, a thought suddenly flashed through Xuanzang's mind. In fact, he had heard about some monks in Buddhism a long time ago who were only interested in having fun and money, but he had never seen it with his own eyes. Now he saw the misfortune in his heart. In this scene, Xuanzang is so smart that he doesn't know the cause and effect. Faced with the questioning eyes of the crowd, Xuanzang lowered his head for the first time. At this moment, he was a little panicked and didn't know how to face the crowd. Seeing Xuanzang lowering his head and saying nothing, Guan knew that he had to take action, otherwise this Buddhist conference would turn into a joke. The most important thing is that as a destined scripture seeker, Guan did not allow Xuanzang to waver in his heart. So he walked out and gave Xuanzang the 9-ring brocade cassock from Tibet. This was once a good story and is now seen. The old monk walked out and seemed to be meeting you. Why should you just be in the world and forget the true body of the Buddha? The Buddha has the Vajra and the anger, but in this life, he is the 32 phases of the Buddha. Why bother to be stubborn? It is better to put down the faint voice, as if there is a kind of mini Buddha. The sound slowly reverberated, and the people who had been confused were once again full of determination towards Buddhism. On the other side, looking at this group of angry people, Zan Zhang on the high platform was suddenly confused. He was almost sure that the old monk who suddenly appeared in front of him was he as a truly enlightened monk, but for some reason the confusion in his heart is getting deeper and deeper. Is this really the right thing to do? When Amitabha saw Xuanzang, he still lowered his head and remained silent. Guanyin Xuanji calmly said, "The world is ignorant, and there are some disasters just because of the lack of teachings in this small town. If there is anything to be desired, if you come to the Mahayana teachings, you will be able to overcome all suffering and evil. Cultivate an infinite lifespan and practice Mahayana Buddhism." When the voice of Guanyin falls, Xuanzang suddenly raises his head. "Master, if there really is Mahayana Buddhism, dare to ask where it is." Now, there is a big thunder in the countries of the great western heaven. In the Yin temple, I, Buddha Tathagata, saw Xuanzang. Hearing the appearance of Mahayana Buddhism, Guanyin breathed a sigh of relief. Then he stepped forward, and auspicious clouds appeared and went straight into the sky. Guanyin's true body appeared in front of everyone. When the Bodhisattva saw this scene, Xuanzang, the king of Tang, was even satisfied. The civil and military officials in the court were so shocked that they couldn't help but kneel down and worship. No one expected that the Bodhisattva would appear among the many kneeling figures. It's just a puppet of Buddhism. Is this Buddhism? In that case, let's see who has the bigger fist. Thinking of this, my originally hidden consciousness burst out in an instant, almost killing me, and I manifested the consciousness of Guanyin in my mind. The consciousness was completely annihilated. At this moment, Guanyin, who was being worshipped by thousands of people, suddenly burst out. The little Taoist priest was immortal. How could he block the power of victory? Could it be that some Taoist secretly took action? Thinking of this, Guanyin looked around and said lightly, "Who knows?" "Fellow Taoist," I asked. "You to see me," but the voice echoed for a long time, but no voice showed up and left. After a long time without receiving a response, Guanyin's eyes fell on the hanging tomb again. No matter what, the great cause of learning scriptures is the most important now. Thinking about him, gently stretched out his hand and took out a slip of paper. The next moment, the slip of paper slowly unfolded in midair to pay homage to the emperor of the Tang dynasty. There is a Uran in the west, a picture of 108,000 miles, a great achievement, all the clouds and clear skies. If you are willing to go back to the country, you can go beyond the orbit and escape from the group. Those who go seek righteousness in this life, but after unfolding the chant, they accidentally shrank and fluttered in front of Emperor Taizong Li Shimin. As a result, Li Shimin naturally did not dare to neglect the chant and quickly said, "How can I send someone to the Dai Temple in Tianzhu to get it? This Dacheng Buddhist Sutra will be re-educated in one way." As he said this, his eyes could not help but fall on Zan Burial. The poor monk then went to Tianju to ask for the true sutra. If he does not get the true sutra from the Western heaven, he will never look back. At this moment, Guanyin saw that Zan Burial was so slow. Nodding, this first step to the westward journey has begun. My mission has also been completed. Thinking of this, the auspicious cloud swaying majestically at the feet of Guanyin. The next moment, a hint of sarcasm flashed across my face, and I opened my mouth coldly. I want to leave before the Taoist affairs are finished. Did you really lose your face as a disciple of a former saint during this trip? Hearing this, Guanyin felt a little surprised in his heart that a little mortal Taoist revealed the mystery to him when he said hello. He glanced at me again, but he didn't notice anything. The doubts in my heart are getting deeper and deeper. Which quasi-sage is standing behind you? Let it come out, otherwise I will kill you. On the other side, I heard the words of Guanyin and frowned slightly. This is because I took my action just now as a certain quasi-sage. Holy method, haha, this Guanyin is very domineering. Didn't you take action just now? That consciousness did not intend to let the channel survive. Well, after hearing this, Guanyin's face was flattened again. Since this Amitabha if fellow Taoist doesn't want to show up, then don't blame me for being ruthless. I happen to be short of a boy, so you can take care of it. The next moment, the Buddha's light turned into ripples and passed towards me like a long rainbow, but I put my hands down and stood up. The Buddha's light that could destroy everything suddenly dissipated. Looking at this scene, everyone was stunned and didn't react. Could it be that the Bodhisattva stopped his hand? Guanyin was also a little dazed at this moment. Although the Buddha's light was just a casual blow, it was enough to deal with ordinary fairies. Why did it dissipate now? In fact, it was not just Guanyin who was wondering about the creatures in the western region. I was also surprised in my heart. Looking at the scene above Heoqianjing in the heaven, the Jade Emperor couldn't help but reveal a trace of curiosity. What kind of quasi-sage can avoid Heoqianjing's prying eyes? Thinking of the Jade Emperor urging him to move, Heoqianjing only saw some ripples in the soft and cute light on it. Suddenly, a figure accidentally flashed across the screen of Heoqianjing. The speed was too fast. Even if there was the Jade Emperor of Heoqianjing, he could only see an afterimage. At this time, Teibai Jinxing also came over and stared at the afterimage for a long time before he spoke with some uncertainty. The Taoist priest heard this and the Jade Emperor perked up. Then he realized that the afterimage was very familiar, but he was a mortal Taoist priest. How could such a terrifying speed happen? The Jade Emperor felt that he could no longer understand the scene in front of him. Suddenly, a thought emerged from his mind. Could it be that the Taoist priest was pretending to be a pig and eating the tiger? Waiting for what he was going to do, the Jade Emperor's gaze continued. Once he landed on Heoqianjing, he suddenly saw the direction in which the Taoist was heading and was stunned again. Could it be that he wanted to start fighting directly? The Taoist's speed was difficult for even Heoqianjing to fully grasp, but there was no doubt that he was heading towards Guanyin. At the same time as he went, a golden light flashed in Guanyin's eyes. Although Guanyin had not felt the slightest fluctuation of spiritual power from this Taoist priest, his speed alone was comparable to that of Quansheng. At this moment, Guanyin was extremely shocked, but no one could the quasi-victory advantage of entering the stream as at the next moment. The Yu Jing pavilion in my hand turns into a stream of light and grabs forward. The willow branch rising above the Yu Jing pavilion must be a treasure. Although it is not in the immortal world, it is a Haoshan treasure. It is very precious. Guanyin believes it. These two treasures were enough to stop the Taoist, but I didn't seem to see these two treasures. Even the speed did not slow down at all. Even the Jade Emperor was dumbfounded when the Taoist walked past these two treasures and did not react at all. Guanyin on the other side also saw this scene, and his originally calm face was suddenly replaced by horror. But it was too late for him to think about it. Subconsciously, Guanyin was planning to sacrifice the purple elf to make the final resistance to him. But at this moment a crisp voice suddenly sounded indifferently from between heaven and earth. Then Guanyin felt some burning pain on his cheek. At this moment, the only thought in Guanyin's mind was that he had been slapped. After being silent for a long time, Guanyin finally reacted strongly. The sense of shame almost made him go crazy. Now he couldn't believe how a Taoist could dare to do this. Then Guanyin indifferently thought of a thought in his mind. He must not let this Taoist survive, otherwise it would become a shame that he could never erase in his life. The next second the Buddha's light that fills the sky bursts out from Guanyin's body. The power of quasi-victory explodes in an instant. It is too strong. When Guanyin was a conferred god, he had already proved that Deluo's existence had too much foundation. After entering Buddhism, he broke through the quasi-victory in one fell swoop with the charm of Buddhism. It can be said that he possesses the charm of both Buddhism and Taoism. At this moment, he has the power of quasi-victory with cold fury and unleashes evil without reservation. The entire Tang dynasty can feel the vastness. If Guanyin had not had a trace of reason or love for cause and effect, the power of victory would not have been spread. At this moment, the Tang dynasty would have been reduced to ruins. At the same time, after feeling the vast aura of Guanyin, the gazes of countless creatures, everyone gathered here to know that although the westward journey has attracted a lot of attention, for most of the powerful people in the ancient world, it is nothing worth paying attention to. After all, the West will flourish on the day of dawn. In this case, they only need to send Huang Ting away. Just wait for the Bright Festival to pass without touching the cause and effect. After all, the horror of the Bright Festival was also reflected in the previous battle of conferring gods. Even the saints are powerless. As for the saints, they are all ants who are sure to win. So what if once the disaster is over, no one wants to be in this world? It's time to contaminate some karma, but some people still plan to occasionally appear after the Bright Festival to help the westward journey and gain some merits. However, those who are mostly close to Buddhism and even heaven rarely take the turn of others, and some ancient quasi-sages actually don't need it. This kind of merit can only send some disciples of the younger generation to assist. Of course, there are also a very few great Meng who take action personally. For example, Zhen Yuan is one of the 3,000 guests in the mortal world. The name of Zhen Yuan, Great Immortal, is extremely resounding. However, there was always Hong Yun back then. After the death of Zhen Adam, he no longer wanted to compete for supremacy. The Buddhists asked him for help and did a favor. However, even so, he was not too cautious about Zhen Adam, who was traveling to the west. In his opinion, he could just take the Buddhist monk and follow the process casually. Anyway, this is among the three realms. If the saints do not leave Buddhism and join forces with the heaven, who can shake the westward journey? But now, these ancient powerful people who did not care about the westward journey are all awakened by the quasi-sage power revealed from Guanyan's body. What is going on? They are all stunned. You have to know that generally speaking, quasi-sages will not evaporate rashly. Unreservedly releasing their power like this is more like determined to fight to the death. This is a big deal. How many years ago have there been few quasi-sages since becoming gods? There was a dispute, and the owner of that breath was the well-known Guanyan. Therefore, under the temptation of curiosity, all these people's eyes turned towards them. They wanted to know what was going on. They were so shameless. At this time, looking at Guanyan, who was almost losing his mind, I shook my hand and Xuanji said calmly, "No wonder. After apostasy, he was still able to prosper." In fact, although the reputation of Zen Buddhism is somewhat bad, especially the original Tianzun who loves to bully the small and big, it is actually shameless. But there is one good thing about Zen Buddhism, that is, the disciple who protects the calf is bullied by the master. Your Majesty, especially since this master is one of the few saints in the ancient world, and this saint also has two brothers who are also saints. Who dares to provoke the Zen sect in the entire ancient world? That is, the two religions will break up because of the canonization of gods, otherwise Buddhism. Who dares to provoke the disciples of Zen? The original Tianzun chewed his bones and rolled over before going away. No matter how bad it was, even the immortals and the Four Swords Tai Chi disciples had to kneel to receive him. Strictly speaking, the original Tianzun was really already a human being to his disciples. Yi Jing cheated his own brothers and didn't cheat his disciples, but Siheng chose to apostatize. It's really unjustifiable, especially after apostasy. He was still doing well in Buddhism. He had some tricks, but he was a bit thicker. You heard this. The anger in Guanyan's heart was once again ignited and she said coldly, "Who are you, a Taoist priest, who dare to stop the journey to the west? Do you really don't know how much it will cost to stop Liang Jia?" He was afraid that he would be contaminated by the cause and effect and end up with no burial place, but now that he was ordered to go west, a little Taoist actually stopped him. Even though he could see that the Taoist priest in front of him was extremely powerful, but even so, he was still a slightly bigger one under the calamity. Think about how many quasi-sages there were in the tribulation sect back then. Even an outer disciple could challenge the 12 golden immortals of the tribulation sect, but all ended in a miserable outcome. Therefore, he couldn't understand why the Taoist in front of him appeared. As for that Taoist temple, the scholar has long been forgotten by Guanyan. In his opinion, how could a strong man at the quasi-sage level care about a small mortal Taoist temple? If he wanted to, he could open a Taoist temple in heaven. After all, if a quasi-saint level person, a strong man who joins the heavenly court and the Jade Emperor, will definitely be willing to meet his small request to stop Xixing. Hearing this, I smiled faintly and said softly, "So what? In fact, the matter of Xixing has nothing to do with me. I just want to get my Taoist temple back. Then if I had the chance, I would happily accept this Taoist robe like an ordinary person. Marrying a wife and having children in an ordinary life is not a bad thing. It's a pity that Guanyan is forcing me to do it one after another and wants to kill him. This is a lesson for Buddhism. Isn't it that I should be easy to bully? Anyway, I am invincible. Since this Buddhism chooses to provoke me first, then don't leave on this journey to the west." What I don't know is that when these words are spoken, there are waves of gasps throughout the whole world. These are naturally the prehistoric pigs who just brought twilight over. Most of them don't know the cause and effect. But even so, they were shocked when they heard my bold words. "Who is this? Don't you know the horror of forgiveness?" At this moment, the prehistoric pigs are strong. I couldn't help but skip such a thought in my mind. That's understanding. Even saints dare not underestimate the existence of this person. What is this person's background? Everyone's eyes couldn't help but fall on me, wanting to find out, but they looked at them for a long time. Realizing that this seemed to be just an ordinary person, the whole prehistoric world suddenly became a little nervous. How could this be possible? Because the twilight just fell over, they didn't see the scene just now. I was a little confused when I saw the ordinary person, because they were not there. I feel the slightest fluctuation of spiritual energy in my body. Isn't this just a mortal? There is no one who can hide from their perception. This person is not a saint by any means, but there are some people who saw the cause and effect and frowned deeply. At this moment, they went through the memories in their minds, but no matter how they think about it, no one can be found who matches this Taoist at all. As a quasi-sage in Tianning Lingxiao Palace, the Jade Emperor shouldn't be so unknown. Looking at the scene on the Haoshan mirror, a trace of thought flashed across his face and he whispered softly. Why couldn't he have thought of this? Which one is it? In the ancient world, it is extremely difficult for a quasi-sage level existence, even a Deluo Jinxian, to follow the right path. This requires not only talent, but also opportunity and long-term accumulation. Perhaps there are one or two unknown giants in this ancient world. How could Luo Jinxian, a quasi-sage level being, hide it from others? His strange words and deeds were all in line with heaven's laws. It was difficult not to attract attention. Even if he acted low-key, he shouldn't be so unknown. Thinking of this, the Jade Emperor frowned again. The picture on the Haoshan mirror whispers softly. Is there really someone stupid enough to dare to resist the cause and effect of forgiveness? This disciple is an excellent example of being as fragile as an ant in the face of forgiveness. That battle was a wake-up call for the entire world, so that no one in the Shishing Temple dared to come out to fight for cause and effect. But now this inexplicable appearance has occurred. A Taoist priest is worth pondering. It is not possible that at this time, there is such a stubborn Qingtaching who is so stubborn in understanding the cause and effect. Someone is really disturbing the journey to the west. The Jade Emperor can't help but think of a possibility. Who could it be? Dare to forgive and understand accurately. It is absolutely impossible to win the level. He should be a saint. Sanqing should be one of them. Tongtian Primordial and even Taishong Laozi may have become sectarians. Needless to say, one of the Qing disciples of Tongtian cult master Gui Ling Sheng was kidnapped by the West and died tragically at the hands of literati. She also had sectarian beliefs. Many disciples were also kidnapped by the West and used as mounts or directly killed. This hatred is not deep. In addition to the Jia sect, the Zen sect also has a grudge against the West. You must know that in the war between Nifunction and Buddhism, it was nominally to help the Zen sect, but he deceived many Zen disciples away. Naturally, the original Tianzun was not angry about this. As for Taishong Laozi, although no disciples were harmed when he became a god, the three pure beings were integrated into one body and were led by the West to commit fratricide. The Jade Emperor felt that the Supreme Saint shouldn't be too good for Western senses. The Jade Emperor couldn't help but shook his head and decisively put aside this idea. The saint was not careful about the cause and effect. He was afraid that it would not reduce the amount too much. The Jade Emperor felt that now he should just watch the fun with peace of mind. At this moment in Tang Chang'an, Guanyin also calmed down and said calmly, if fellow Taoist Amitabha is so obsessed with enlightenment, won't he be afraid of death without a burial place? Guanyin is still restraining himself. After all, this Taoist just now shocked him too much. Even though he was already burning with anger, he wanted to kill this person. The Taoist killed him quickly, but if he didn't understand why his treasure failed and hurriedly turned against him, he might make the same mistake again. This was not what Guanyin wanted to see. Looking at the cautious look on Guanyin's face, a trace of impatience and lack of thought flashed in my eyes. To be entangled with Guanyin, to understand cause and effect, may be too frightening for others to face, but for me, it was just like that. As I visited me, who seemed ordinary at first, a terrifying power suddenly burst out. The next moment, the power swept across and struck the sky. How could this be possible? Those prehistoric pigs who had just looked over and didn't know what was going on screamed. After all, in their perception, this man did not have any spiritual power. The fluctuations have now given them a severe blow. How can they be mortals? They are not weak even among the near winners. In this case, be prepared to face the wrath of Buddhism. Feel this terrifying power. Guanyin's face was downcast and he spoke slowly. The golden lotus floating under his feet actually turned into a stream of light and fled towards the distance. The speed was so fast that most people in the prehistoric era did not react. He almost dodged. A moment ago, he made threats and looked unyielding, but then he just walked away and looked at this Guanyin without hesitation. The model who actually turned around and left thought that he was going to witness the prehistoric battle that was about to win. Everyone was stunned and a little unbelievable that he avoided it like this. This gave them the feeling of a punch hitting cotton. He raised it high and fell gently, which made them feel happy. I'm a little depressed, but I can't see that this is a near-win battle. However, some people know that Guanyin's choice to leave like this is the most correct choice. For example, the Jade Emperor, who has been observing this station from the beginning, has used the name Tianjing to monitor the world. Tang knew the cause and effect of this stop and also saw the scene where the acquired treasure in Guanyan's hand had no effect on the Taoist. It can be said that if the reason was not understood clearly, Guanyan would only be humiliating himself even if he insisted on fighting. Why was this Taoist? Can I ignore that treasure? I took a deep breath. The Jade Emperor looked at my figure shown on the sky mirror and frowned deeply. Could it be an innate treasure? A terrifying thought emerged from the Jade Emperor's mind. If it is true, if you live in the chaos of the supreme treasure, then maybe it is not the layout of the saint. After all, even if the saint uses this innate treasure, it can even lure the saint. How can it be easily handed over to an unknown Taoist? The master of the treasure is afraid that it will be difficult to control. There is only one possibility, that is this innate treasure was obtained by this person by chance, and the innate treasure is an existence that even a saint would be excited about. By then, I am afraid that countless ancient beings from all over the world will appear to compete for this innate treasure, and the entire three worlds will be in chaos. Therefore, the Emperor felt that if it was possible, he would still have to verify it himself. Of course, compared to the Jade Emperor, who was in the good heaven and knew the cause and effect clearly. Most people in the prehistoric era still did not see this clearly. They only thought that maybe someone was not responsible for it. The appearance of a well-known quasi-sage conflicts with Buddhism. Although it is not common, it is not too bizarre. Naturally, one would not associate it with the innate treasure saint. However, the Guanyan shark is still a very shocking thing to the prehistoric era. After all, the power of Buddhism has grown rapidly since he was declared a god. Even some ancient quasi-sages are not willing to antagonize them. This battle somewhat subverted everyone's understanding of Buddhism. Therefore, this battle quickly spread throughout the ancient world and was known to countless people. Guanyan naturally knew this but was helpless. The most important thing for him now is I returned to Shishan Lingshan as soon as possible and handed over the matter to the world-honored Tathagata to make a decision. I ran away. Looking at the Guanyan who left quickly, I also had a hint of helplessness on my face. Guanyan had already left the Taoist temple and I chased after him. I was afraid that I would be cold. I shook my head. I ignored the escaping Guanyan and walked slowly in the direction of my incarnation. I decided to throw all the Buddha statues in the Taoist temple into the toilet first. I was disgusted by the sight of it, but what I didn't know was that my actions today had already spread to the public. Across most of the ancient world, the heavenly court is some distance away from the Lingxiao Palace. It is considered a low place. There is a large hall built on the clouds, covered with paint and shrouded in strong light. Although there is not much lightning, it gives people a very independent feeling of ceremony. Miraculously, there is a pearl-red plaque above the main hall with the words, Induction Hall, written on it. Compared to the many main halls in heaven, this small induction hall is indeed not worth mentioning. Even many people don't know that there is such a hall in heaven. However, if it is mentioned that the owner of this hall has gone through the battle of the gods, most people have some impressions: Sanjiao sacrifice, Yongxiao, Chongxiao, and Bishao. They were originally the sister of Zhao Gongming, an outer disciple of the Knot sect. The great formation of the 9 bends of the Yellow River, the 12 sutras of Zen Buddhism, defeated the Zen father and the leader first, and then Taoists had to retreat. It was a glorious scene, but it was a pity that at the last moment, the saint took action and directly suppressed the 3 brigade. The dead souls were on the list of gods, and after the gods, Sanjiao then she came to heaven to become the sensing immortal at any time. When Hunyuan Jindo was in charge of the reputation in the world, the sensing hall was where the 3 of them held their vocations in heaven. At this time, a light mirror appeared in front of Bai Shao, the youngest in the hall, and there was a faint light in it. Some scenes from the Tang dynasty appeared, and you could see that the light mirror was not as good as the Haoshan mirror and could only see some blurry scenes. But even so, Bai Shao was watching with gusto. What was the little girl looking at? Just then, a slightly gentle voice suddenly came. When I came, I saw Yongxiao walking out with a trace of curiosity on his face and chuckled softly. He was so intent on seeing some male fairy. I need my sister to talk to him. I saw Yongxiao wearing a work uniform and a beautiful appearance. At this moment, his eyes were smiling more. It's very tender. Oh, my sister is joking again. After hearing this, Bai Shao's eyes opened from the light mirror and looked at Yun Xiao who was walking towards him. He pouted and said he was just a Taoist priest, and pointed at me in the light mirror, tilted his head and thought for a moment, then added a handsome Taoist priest. That's all. After saying that, he turned his head to prevent himself from looking at the Taoist priest anymore. Hearing this, Yun Xiao frowned and a trace of surprise flashed across his face. He said softly, "What kind of Taoist priest is worthy of your concern?" He still knows about his little sister Yun Xiao. Although she is a bit naughty, she is not attracted to an ordinary Taoist. She must be this. There must be something special about the Taoist. Facing his sister's question, Bishao naturally did not hide anything and told everything he knew. In fact, Bishao knew that Shi Xing was in a fun situation, so he wanted to see the appearance of the Buddhist scripture seeker, but he never wanted to learn from it. The person made her feel ordinary, but her attention was attracted by this person. Especially the scene where this person decisively slapped Guanyan directly made Bishao's eyes full of stars. She must know that in the conferred god battle, even though they also included C. The 12 golden immortals, including Hang, were captured alive and cut off the top 3 flowers, but they didn't have the guts to do this. Later, they were plotted by the saint and ended up in the list of gods. Every time he thought about it, Bishao felt a little angry in his heart and hoped to eradicate the religion. He was also dissatisfied with Buddhism. It happened that this Sihang was a disciple of the Shouting sect at first and then switched to Buddhism. Naturally, Bishao didn't like him very much. Now seeing his insanity, his heart felt so happy. Sihang was beaten. Hearing his little sister's description, Youngshao's face was filled with tears. Revealing a trace of surprise, he couldn't help but wonder, who is that Taoist? After switching to Buddhism, Sihang has already broken through the realm of near victory with the blessing of Buddhist aura. His strength is naturally much stronger than during the conferred god period. In addition, Sanjiao, after being on the list of gods, I have lost a lot of physical strength. Even if I go to the Yellow River Formation repeatedly for a long time, I am afraid it will be difficult to get benefits from this trip. Since that Taoist is so powerful, even Guan does not dare to compete with him. After being so humiliated, he chose to run away in a hurry. Bishao shook his head when he heard Youngshao's words and said, "It's a person I've never seen before." Qian Bishao, who was a disciple at that time, felt that he was well informed, but he didn't know anything about that Taoist's background. This couldn't help but arouse Bishao's curiosity. At this moment, Bishao couldn't help but have the idea of going to find out what was going on. He was already planning something. That person from the west, Liangji, couldn't do it without permission. Actions were tainted with cause and effect. Seeing Bishao's eyes turning slightly, Youngshao frowned and couldn't help but reached out and gently scratched his poor nose. He opened his mouth and warned, "Otherwise you know what will happen to Liangji." When the battle of the conferred gods began, Youngshao, knowing the horror, he obeyed the master's order and closed the mountain door tightly. However, how could he bear the hatred of the murder? In the end, he was shot on the list of gods. Although this time it was not the disaster of joining the sect, Youngshao still instinctively did not want to be contaminated by the cause and effect. Hearing these words, Bai Xiao nodded repeatedly like a chicken, patted his chest and promised, "Sister, don't worry, nothing will happen." He looked at his little sister with a confident look on her face. However, there was no trace of relaxation on Yunshao's face. He just shook his head helplessly and slowly said, "You must remember the lesson of becoming a god. I know my little sister Yunshao very well. According to her quirky personality, I want her to grow old. It does seem impossible to stay in this induction pad honestly, and she can't keep staring at Bishao. She can only gently remind Bishao not to let Bishao go astray. Liangji should not use this thing as a last resort. It's better not to get involved, otherwise no one knows what will happen." When Yan Bishao's expression became a little more solemn, and he nodded slowly and said, "I know that the battle was also a pain for Bishao. Naturally, she didn't want it either. What can I say after experiencing that kind of thing again? Just treat it as a sexual intercourse that once again broke the bottleneck of the hall." Outside the hall, I saw a rather heroic woman walking slowly towards her, with a sword hanging on her waist. She has a feeling of being very heroic and valiant. Ranked second among Chongshao and Chongshao, she has always been happy with grudges and is resolute in doing things. Now she just came back and saw the elder sister and the younger sister frowning as if they were discussing something. She couldn't help but ask the little one, "My sister saw a Taoist priest coming towards Chongshao." Yun Shao shook his head and explained softly that there seemed to be some conflict with the Buddhist sect. You know, because at first Bishao just wanted to take a look at the Buddhist monk and didn't pay much attention to the Taoist priest. So in fact, I don't know much about the cause and effect. I only know that there was some conflict between the Taoist and Guanyin. What followed was the battle. Is the Taoist the one from the Tang dynasty? When he heard this, Chongshao couldn't help but have a trace of doubt on his face with a trace of heroism. He couldn't help but ask, as if he was asking Yi Yun. Yungshao Bishao was stunned when he said this. How did Chongshao know so clearly that someone had violated the rules of heaven and was demoted to the mortal world, and was born near the Tang dynasty? Chongshao opened his mouth and explained, "I went there with the Hunyuan gold dough to wish him a safe birth. I happened to see the light of Buddha emerging near the Tang dynasty, so I went to Sanjiao. The priesthood is to be in charge of the reputation of the world." What happened to the second sister? Bishao, whose second sister was at the scene and had been relying on the blurry light mirror to eat melon, couldn't help but said quickly, "Tell me," because the light mirror was completely inferior to the Jade Emperor's Haoshan mirror. Bishao had no idea about some details. She saw that Guanyin shot out a Buddha's light when she disagreed with her words, was beaten immediately, and then decisively walked away. Although the result was a bit satisfying, not knowing the cause and effect still made Bishao feel as curious as an ant crawling, otherwise it would not have happened. The thoughts of Detang who went there in person saw Bishao looking helpless. Chongshao smiled bitterly and explained that she had naturally known about it in the realm of Detang at that time. This opening was also a 151 story. Shao and even Yungshao were attracted because of a Taoist temple. After listening to Chongshao's story, Youngshao's beautiful eyes flashed slightly and couldn't help but sigh softly. Siheng was more domineering when he went to Buddhism than when he was in Zen. Although Chongshao didn't know, Guanyin once planned to occupy that Taoist's world with her spiritual thoughts. However, from Chong Xiao's story about the changes in the Taoist's attitude and the words he said, he could still guess one or two. After that, Siheng took action directly, which was obviously not the case. Leaving a way for others to survive is so overbearing. It was even worse than when he was a god. These monks are indeed not good people. After listening to Chong Xiao's description, Bi Xiao also expressed her own opinions. Originally, she had feelings for the Buddhists. I didn't have any good feelings at all, and now I'm even more dissatisfied with him. Let's not talk about this. Seeing Bi Xiao's angry look, Young Xiao couldn't help showing a look of helplessness on his face, and touched Bi Xiao's small cheek. The head then said, "My little sister, please remember not to cause trouble." Seeing Chong Xiao telling the cause and effect, Young Xiao, who was worried about his little sister, couldn't help but tell him, knowing that Wen Yan Bi Xiao had played with this little head, even though he felt a little unhappy in his heart. Shang Dan still nodded dully. She also understood the seriousness of the matter and naturally would not easily get involved in the robbery and cause trouble. Soon, the hall returned to peace again. At the same time, when I returned to the Tang dynasty, all the arrogant monks were lowered. The head retreated consciously. If they had treated this Taoist as a soft persimmon before, now everything has been reversed. Even Guanyin Bodhisattva has to avoid the existence. In fact, they can provoke these monks. Now, the only thought is to escape quickly. As for other people in this place, they no longer care about the Taoist priest. Even Li Shimin couldn't help but walked over to me, cupped his hands, and said respectfully, "The Taoist priest exists like this and I don't know about the monks' family affairs here. I hope the Taoist priest can forgive me." Li Shimin was really shocked. Although he knew that the immortals still existed and that as an emperor, he also had the aura of kingship to bless all kinds of evil spirits, but he did not dare to show any lightness in the face of such a powerful person as Guanyin. And in front of him was this. Although Li Shimin, a Taoist, doesn't know who he is, judging from his performance just now, he is definitely a hidden power. Naturally, Li Shimin will not act like an emperor. What's more, he doesn't like the tyranny of Buddhism in his heart. Also somewhat sincere, there is no difference between the Li Shimin in the world of Journey to the West and the Li Shimin in my memory. He still prays for rain and locusts during droughts and worships gods occasionally. However, compared to the world in my memory, worshipping gods and offering sacrifices to the sky here really works. I briefly exchanged greetings with Li Shimin. After that, I didn't care about the monks who walked still towards my Taoist temple. I waved the several golden statues of Buddha enshrined and flew to the sky. The next moment, the golden statues seemed to be torn apart by a huge force and made a loud noise. It turned into countless golden rain and evenly sprinkled all over Chang'an. Seeing this scene, the people of Chang'an were stunned for a moment and then started to snatch it wildly. After all, it was a golden rain in the true sense. I saw the Buddha statue shattered and turned into a rain of light. People feel a radiant feeling as it falls, but cleverly avoids the mortals. It hits the ground and immediately triggers a day of looting. That is gold, although the people in Chang'an can be regarded as small rich families, who can have too much gold. And during the fight, some people did not forget me. They kowtowed in the direction of the Taoist temple. The whole Chang'an became a little livelier. But seeing this scene, Li Shimin's eyes widened slightly and then he endured it. I couldn't help shaking my head and feeling in my heart, it is worthy of being an enlightened person to take it from all people and use it for all people. It is really in line with the way of heaven. How to cast this Buddha in this life may be hidden from the eyes of ordinary people and even buried in the eyes of such enlightened monks. But as an emperor, how could Li Shimin not know that if a monk easily gathered enough gold to build this life under his eyes without him knowing, then Li Shimin, the emperor, would also be doomed. In fact, he knew in his heart that most of the gold and silver were from Nahua. The amount of money the monks got from various sources of raw silk is mind-boggling. However, due to the power of Buddhism, Li Shimin has never done anything. Now that the gold that was originally taken from the people of Chang'an has once again returned to the people, Li Shimin has more feelings for me, some understanding. He even decided to come to this Taoist temple more often in the future instead of just asking for advice. After all, after today's incident, Detang may really appear in the eyes of the gods and Buddhas in the sky. It is obvious that Detang's current strength alone is very powerful. It is difficult to protect oneself in this situation. It is necessary to find a backer. The Taoist in front of him is super powerful and can surpass Guanyin Bodhisattva. He also has the world to distribute gold and silver to everyone. This state of mind naturally makes Li Shimin feel extremely sad. I admire him, and the most important thing is that he dares to openly tear this Buddha statue apart. This Taoist must have absolute strength, otherwise he would never dare to do so. You must know that although Li Shimin is not an immortal, he is still aware of some of the regulations. Generally speaking, immortals are worshipped by mortals. Gods can be said to be prestigious beings in these three realms, and the more prestigious the gods are, the more they care about their own face. If mortals don't enshrine the statues of gods and let them decay, what will happen to the gods? But if their own statues of gods are smashed, it will really offend them. If these immortals don't have full confidence, how can the Taoist dare to do this? What's more, the The previous battle with Guanyin has proved the strength of this Taoist. How can Li Shimin, a Taoist who has the world's power and is extremely terrifying, not know how unjust this is? Naturally they also regard me as the only supporter of the Tang dynasty. However, compared to Li Shimin's random thoughts, my own thoughts are too simple. I just feel that I can find a place to throw away the Buddha statue. Wouldn't it be cheaper for the group of monks? Forget this matter, what if those monks find an opportunity to pick up the Buddha statue in the toilet again? It's better to just divide the gold. Anyway, it was cast from the incense money collected by this group of monks, and it can be regarded as returning to the original owner. But what I didn't know was that my action set off a storm in Buddhism. For these Buddhas it is the most serious provocation because the image of the Buddha enshrined in this reincarnation silk is that of the third Buddha. This is currently the Buddha with the highest status in Buddhism except for the saints. Although the power of faith generated by this Buddha statue is indeed true for the third Buddha. It's nothing, but it's a matter of face. A Taoist priest was so provocative, and Guanyin came back to tell the truth with a little added detail about the cause and effect. The entire Buddhist sect was completely angry. At this time, the sound of Buddha's voice in Lingshan was long and loud, but it was louder than usual. A little anxious and a little less calm, Guanyin has returned to the Mahavira palace. At this moment, he is standing next to the world-honored Tathagata and softly recounts his experience in the lobby. His journey to the west was blocked and the Buddha statue was destroyed. A Taoist dared to provoke Buddhism in this way. Following Guanyin's narration, the entire Buddhism suddenly there was an uproar, and the Buddha, who was present like Guanyin, did not think that a quasi-holy sect was an enemy of their Buddhist sect for the sake of a mortal Taoist temple. What's more, if something unexpected happened during these two kalpas, he was afraid that he would fall into a place of eternal destruction. I know how dangerous this is. For a Taoist temple, I am afraid that if I tell anyone, I will be laughed to death. Therefore, the Buddha present felt that there must be a conspiracy in this. Perhaps the Taoist had been planning for a long time before he played this game in order to disturb. Manjusri saw the headless mantra of Guanyin who was speaking. He and Manjusri were once one of the 12 immortals of Zen Buddhism. After becoming gods, they must have turned to Buddhism together. They were the same kind of people. Although they were not close to each other during Zen Buddhism, there is no bad blood, but over the years, as Guanyin's status in Buddhism has increased, his relationship with Manjusri has gradually begun to break down. For Manjusri, it was natural that he wanted to improve his status in Buddhism when he first came to Buddhism, not to mention that Manjusri's ability is indeed worthy of it. However, because he was overpowered by Guanyin everywhere, Manjusri was somewhat dissatisfied. In terms of strength, Manjusri felt that he was stronger than Guanyin. He didn't understand why Guanyin was so prosperous in Buddhism, while Wenshu could only be a foil. He was really dissatisfied with the fact that the world-honored one who could obtain great merits and virtues from the journey to the west was entrusted to Guanyin. So after seeing Guanyin's red demotion, Manjusri stood up directly without any hesitation. He planned to let the world-honored one see how powerful he was. Then this Buddhism, the position of the first bodhisattva belongs to Manjusri. I dare to ask Venerable Manjusri how to solve it. At this moment, another Buddha came out and made a Buddha bow to Manjusri. Then he spoke and said that the Taoist strength is probably extraordinary and accurate. Is it comparable to Guanyin's strength? There are many Buddhas and Bodhisattvas present. However, it is extremely clear that the quasi-victorious field, looking at the prehistoric times, these existences are already at the top of the pyramid, but now they are suppressed by that Taoist, which really makes all the Buddhas feel uneasy. Think about it carefully. When you see everyone looking at Manjusri, his expression is calm and he looks around indifferently. He opened his mouth and said, if that Taoist was really powerful enough to crush Guanyin, why did he let him leave? Although Manjusri did not actually see the battle between Guanyin and the Taoist, but he still saw a trace of doubt from Guanyin's description. Among them, that Taoist can completely ignore the power of the acquired treasure, and even Guanyin, who is in the early stage of accurate victory, cannot resist the slightest existence. Such strength must at least be in the middle stage of accurate victory, and even very likely in the late stage of accurate victory. But in the field of accurate victory, there is no need to cross a large realm. Even a small gap is enough to determine the outcome of the battle. It stands to reason that if that Taoist really has the strength to achieve accurate victory in the later stage, then relying on Guanyin, I want to leave almost without paying any price. It is an impossible thing, but in fact Guanyin still left without even the slightest hindrance. This made Manjusri a little confused. Could it be that there are some unknown secrets in it? After careful consideration by Manjusri, it was almost certain that the Taoist was definitely weird. What do you mean? At this moment, Guanyin reacted and frowned slightly. He couldn't help but softly said, the Taoist is actually not as powerful as we imagined. In fact, the Taoist Guanyin still cast a shadow in his heart. Even though he had said cruel words before leaving, if he were to face the Taoist Guanyin again, he would still feel uneasy in his heart. But now he heard what Manjusri meant. There are some other deeper reasons. Yes, seeing Guanyin like this, Manjusri couldn't help but reveal a faint smile on his face. He slowly said, according to my guess, the Taoist didn't want to let you go, but couldn't. At this moment, Manjusri's voice was filled with emotion. Madara was confident as if everything was under control. But when he heard Manjusri's confident words, the whole Mahavira palace was filled with a burst of surprise. Everyone's eyes revealed a hint of surprise. What did this sentence mean? After all, that Taoist strength was just that. Listening to Guanyan's description is enough to shock the being who cannot even do anything to the acquired treasure. This level of strength is already considered the pinnacle of the red and yellow pyramid. But what on earth is this Manjusri talking about? According to me, that Taoist should have some kind of treasure. Hiding his true realm, Manjusri didn't intend to hide it when he saw the hesitant eyes. At first glance, he looked like a mortal, which would not attract attention. But when he took action, we naturally took it for granted that this person was hiding his true strength. And because the idea of not being able to see through his true realm would extend in a terrifying direction, Manjusri's slow narration also aroused a voice of approval. It is true that there are too many dangers in red and yellow. Generally speaking, when encountering a being that you cannot see through, you will take it for granted that he is stronger than yourself. This is the instinct of red and yellow creatures that have been experienced for many years. After all, if there is a situation in the same realm that cannot be seen through, it must be only those who are stronger than themselves cannot see through Manjusri's words. It is normal to break some of the underlying rules of red and yellow. Then the Taoist showed that he is not even afraid of the treasure. Seeing that everyone agreed with his words, Manjusri couldn't help but click. He nodded and continued to speak, which further deepened this impression. Therefore, when he decided to take action again, you chose to retreat. It was not the last sentence he said to Guanyan. Hearing Manjusri's words, Guanyan was silent for a long time before he calmed down. The monk nodded and wanted to listen to the willow commandment. It was useless. The monk subconsciously thought that even if he sacrificed the amethyst bell, it would be useless, so he left in a hurry. Guanyan did not deny this, and there was no need to deny it. After all, 2 treasures in a row were useless, and the other party was from him. There is an existence that cannot be seen through from beginning to end. Anyone who encounters this kind of thing will probably choose to avoid the edge for a while. Natural Guanyan is no exception. If we say that at that time, it was already at the end of its struggle. After listening to Guanyan's words, Manjusri showed a trace of his face again. With a confident smile, he said lightly, "Everything he did made you subconsciously think that he was much stronger than you. In fact, he should have been seriously injured when he resisted the treasure. If he was chasing you, he would be exposed." With this scene in this moment, what Manjushri was talking about was a bit shocking at first. But when I thought about it carefully, it seemed that it was indeed the case. Otherwise, how could we explain that the Taoist allowed Guanyan to leave Amitabha so easily and face the noisy Mahavira palace? The Tathagata's expression was neither happy nor sad. He just said a Buddha's name and said lightly, "Now that we have enough preparations for studying the scriptures, what do you think?" He was very calm. However, people who are familiar with the world-honored one know that such an expression means that the Tathagata is getting angry. After all, some of them had wandered around the toilet in the mortal world before seeing the Buddha statue shattered. This was a real humiliation. Even though Ningren had some energy, let alone Buddha, they selectively ignored the fact that Guanyan wanted to kill people at the beginning. World-honored one, the Buddhist sect, should use the power of thunder to kill that Taoist at the sound of the Tathagata's voice. There is a figure walking out. Indeed, if Buddhism chooses the Western style this time, Ningren does not decisively deal with this Taoist. How will some of the prehistoric powers who are already ready to move to the West choose to be disadvantageous to them? Buddhism must be resolved despite it. Hearing this, even Guanyan couldn't bear it. He nodded and immediately raised his head to see who was making such remarks, but when he saw Guanyan for the first time, he was stunned.